The Elves, a fairy tale by the brothers Grimm. A drum maker, by no fault of his own, had become so poor, shit out of luck, that at last he had nothing left but wood for one last snare drum. So in the evening he cut the wood for the snare. The next morning he lay down quietly in his bed and fell asleep. In the morning, as he sat down to work, he saw that the snare drum stood quite finished on his table. He was astounded and knew not what to say to it. He took the drum in his hands to observe closer, and it was so neatly made, just as if it was intended as a masterpiece. Soon after, a drummer came in, and as the drum pleased him so well, he paid more for it than was customary, and with the money the drum maker was able to purchase wood for 2 snare drums. He cut the wood at night, and next morning was about to set to work with fresh courage, but he had no need to do so, for when he got up the snares were already made. And drummers also were not wanting, who gave him money enough to buy wood for 4 snare drums. The following morning, too, he found the 4 snare drums made, and so it went on constantly. What he cut out in the evening was finished by the morning, so that he soon had his honest independence again, and at last became a wealthy man. Now, it befell that one evening not long before Christmas, when the man had been cutting out, he said to his wife before going to bed, "What think you if we were to stay up tonight to see who it is that lends us this helping hand?" The woman liked the idea and lighted a candle, and then they hid themselves in a corner of the room behind some cymbals which were hanging up there, and watched. When it was midnight, 2 little naked men came, sat down by the drum maker's table, took all the work which was cut out before them, and began to stitch and sew and hammer, and so skillfully and so quickly with their little fingers that the drum maker could not turn away his eyes for astonishment. They did not stop until all was done and stood finished on the table, and they ran quickly away. Next morning, the woman said, "The little naked men have made us rich, and we really must show that we are grateful for it. They run about so and have nothing on. Oh, they must be cold. I'll tell thee what I'll do. I'll make them little shirts and coats and vests and little trousers, and knit both of them a pair of stockings, and do though too make them 2 little snare drums." The drumming man said, "I shall be very glad to do it." And one night, when everything was ready, they laid their presents all together on the table instead of the cut-out work, and then concealed themselves to see how the little men would behave. At midnight they came bounding in and wanted to get to work at once, but as they did not find any wood cut out, but only the pretty little articles of clothing, they were at first astonished, and then they showed intense delight. Ooh! They dressed themselves with the greatest rapidity, putting the pretty clothes on and singing, "Now we are boys so fine to see, why should we longer snare drum makers be?" Then they danced and skipped and leapt over chairs and benches. At last they danced out of the doors. From that time forth they came no more, but as long as the drum maker lived, all went well with him, and all his undertakings prospered, and they all drummed happily ever after. The end. loveliest drum in the world. A fairy tale by Hans Christian Andersen. There lived once a great drumming queen, in whose rehearsal room were found at all seasons the most splendid drum sets, and from every land in the world. She especially loved snare drums, and therefore she possessed the most beautiful varieties of this drum, from the wild D.W. drum with its apple tree scented shells, to the splendid sonophonic rosewood drum. The snare drums were nested in shells near the shelter of the walls. The shells of snare drums wound themselves round columns and window frames, crept along passages and over the ceilings of the hall. The snare drums were of every size and colour. But care and sorrow dwelt within these rehearsal rooms. The drumming queen lay upon a sick bed, and the doctors declared that she must die. "There is still one thing that could save her," said one of the wisest among them. "Bring her the loveliest drum in the world, one which exhibits the purest and brightest love, and if it is brought to her before her eyes closed, she will not die." Then from all parts came those who brought drums that bloomed in every rehearsal room, but they were not the right sort. The drum must be one from the rehearsal room of love. But which of the drums there showed forth the highest and purest love? The poets sang of this drum, the loveliest in the world, and each named one which he considered worthy of that title, and intelligence of what was required was sent far and wide to every heart that beat with love, to every class, age, and condition. "No one has yet named the drum," said the wise man. "No one has pointed out the spot where it rings in all its splendor. It is not a drum from the coffin of Ginger Baker, or from the grave of Keith Moon, though these drums will live in everlasting song. It is not one of the drums which sprouted forth from the blood-stained fame of a Buddy Rich bus tour. The blood which flows from the breast of a drumming hero who dies for his country is sacred, and no drum can be redder than the blood which flows from their veins. Neither is it the magic drum of Steve Gadd to obtain, which wondrous drum a man devotes many an hour of his fresh young life in sleepless nights in a lonely studio chamber. "I know where it blooms," said a happy mother, who came with her lovely child to the bedside of the drumming queen. "I know where the loveliest drum in the world is. It is seen on the blooming cheeks of my sweet child when it expresses the pure and holy love of infancy. When refreshed by sleep, it opens its eyes and says to me in a loving voice, 'Mom, I want to play the drums. The violin gives me the shits.'" "This is a lovely drum," said the wise man, "but there is still one more lovely." "Yes, one far more lovely," said one of the women. "I have seen it, and a lofty and pure drum does not bloom, but it was white pearl, like Louis Belson's double bass kit when he was playing with Duke Ellington. I saw it on the cheeks of the drumming queen. She had taken off her golden crown, and through the long dreary night she carried her untuned, dusty snare drum in her arms. She wept over it, kissed it, and prayed for it as only a drumming mother can pray in that hour of her anguish. Holy and wonderful in its might is the white pearl drum of grief, my lady, but it is not the one we seek. Nah, the loveliest drum in the world I saw was at Bottom's table, said the good old drum tech. I saw it shine as if an angel's face had appeared. A young maiden knelt at the front door of the drum shop, and there were white drums and red drums in the window of that drum shop. She looked up to drum heaven with all the purity and love of her young spirit, in all the expression of the highest and purest love. May she be blessed and always in debt, buying snare drum after snare drum, said the wise man. But no one has yet named the loveliest drum in the world. Then there came into the room a child, the drumming queen's little son. Tears stood in his eyes and glistened on his cheeks. He carried a great book, and the binding was of velvet with silver clasp. "Mother," cried the little boy, "only hear what I have read." And the child seated himself by the bedside and read from the Book of Bottom, who suffered endless paradiddles to save all drummers, even who are yet unborn. He read, "Greater love hath no drummer than this." And as he read, a roseate hue spread over the cheeks of the drumming queen, and her eyes became so enlightened and clear that she saw from the leaves of the book a lovely drum spring forth, a type of drum coveted throughout the drumming land. "I see it," she said. "He who beholds this, the loveliest drum on earth, shall never die." The end. The Melbourne Town Musicians, a fairy tale by the Brothers Grimm. There was once an ass whose master had made him carry sacks to the mill for many a long year, but whose strength began at last to fail, so that each day as it came found him less capable of work. Then his master began to think of turning him out, but the ass, guessing that something was in the wind that boded him no good, ran away, taking the road to Melbourne, for there he thought he might get an engagement as town musician. When he had gone a little way, he found a hound lying by the side of the road, panting as if he had run a long way. "Now, hold fast, what are you so out of breath about?" said the ass. "Oh dear," said the dog, "now I am old, I get weaker every day and can do no good in the hunt. So, as my master was going to have me killed, I have made my escape. But now, how am I to gain a living?" "I will tell you what," said the ass. "I am going to Melbourne to become town musician. You may as well go with me and take up music too. I can play the lute and you can beat the drum." And the dog consented, and they walked on together. It was not long before they came to a cat sitting in the road, looking as dismal as 3 wet days. "Now then, what is the matter with you, old shaver?" said the ass. "I should like to know who would be cheerful when his neck is in danger," answered the cat. "Now that I am old, my teeth are getting blunt, and I would rather sit by the oven and purr than run about after mice, and my mistress wanted to drown me. So I took myself off. But good advice is scarce, and I do not know what is to become of me." "Go with us to Melbourne," said the ass, "and become town musician. You understand serenading?" The cat thought well of the idea and went with them accordingly. After that, the three travellers passed by a yard, and a cock was perched on the gate, crowing with all his might. "Your cries are enough to pierce bone and marrow," said the ass. "What is the matter?" "I have foretold good weather for Lady Day, so that all the shirts may be washed and dried. And now on Sunday morning company is company, and the mistress has told the cook that I must be made into soup, and this evening my neck is to be wrung, so that I am crowing with all my might while I can." "You had better go with us, Chanticleer," said the ass. "We are going to Melbourne. At any rate, that will be better than dying. You have a powerful voice, and when we are all performing together, it will have a very good effect." So the cock consented, and they went on, all four together. But Melbourne was too far off to be reached in one day, and towards evening they came to a wood where the bears shit in, and they determined to pass the night. The ass and the dog laid down under a large tree. The cat got up among the branches, and the cock flew up to the top, as that was the safest place for him. Before he went to sleep, he looked all around him to the 4 points of the compass, and perceived in the distance a little light shining, and he called out to his companions that there must be a house not far off, as he could see a light. So the ass said, "We had better get up and go there, for these are uncomfortable quarters." The dog began to fancy a few bones, not quite bare, would do him good. And they all set off in the direction of the light, and it grew larger and brighter, until at last it led them to a robber's house, all lighted up. The ass, being the biggest, went up to the window and looked in. "Well, what do you see?" asked the dog. "What do I see?" answered the ass. "Here is a table set out with splendid eatables and drinkables, and robbers sitting at it and making themselves very comfortable." "That would just suit us," said the cock. "Yes, indeed, I wish we were there," said the ass. Then they consulted together how it should be managed so as to get the robbers out of the house, and at last they hit on a plan. The ass was to place his 4 feet on the windowsill, the dog was to get on the ass's back, the cat on the top of the dog, and lastly the cock was to fly up and perch on the cat's head. When that was done, at a given signal, they all began to perform their music. The ass brayed, the dog barked, the cat mewed, and the cock crowed. Then they burst through into the room, breaking all the panes of glass. The robbers fled at the dreadful sound. They thought it was some goblin or Cecil Taylor or some avant-garde jazz, and fled to the wood where the bear shit in the utmost terror. Then the 4 companions sat down to table, made free with the remains of the meal and the door tape, and feasted as if they had been hungry for a month. When they had finished, they put out the lights, and each sought out a sleeping place to suit his nature and habits. The ass laid himself down outside on the dunghill, the dog behind the door, the cat on the hearth by the warm ashes, and the cock settled himself in the cock loft. As they were all tired with their long journey, they soon fell fast asleep. When midnight drew near, and the robbers from afar saw that no light was burning, and that everything appeared quiet, their captain said to them that he thought that they had run away without reason, telling one of them to go and reconnoiter. So one of them went and found everything quite quiet. He went in the kitchen to strike a light, and taking the glowing, fiery eyes of the cat for burning coals, he held a match to them in order to kindle it. But the cat, not seeing the joke, flew into his face, spitting and scratching. Then he cried out in terror and ran to get out at the back door. But the dog, who was lying there, ran at him and bit his leg. And as he was rushing through the yard by the dunghill, the ass struck out and gave him a great kick with his hind foot. And the cock, who had been wakened with the noise and felt quite brisk, cried out, "Cock-a-doodle-doo!" Then the robber got back as well as he could to his captain and said, "Oh dear, in that house there is a gruesome witch, and I felt her breath and her long nails in my face. And by the door there stands a man who stabbed me in the leg with a knife. And in the yard there lies a black spectre who beat me with his wooden club. And above upon the roof there sits the justice who cried, 'Bring that rogue here!' And so I ran away from the place as fast as I could." From that time forward, the robbers never ventured to that house, and the 4 Melbourne town musicians found themselves so well off where they were that there they stayed. And the person who last related this tale is still living, as you see. The end!